Welcome to the Explainer. Take a deep breath and imagine we're sitting together around a small, crackling campfire. The sun's setting, the stars are just starting to peek out, and we're about to trace the epic, thousands of years long history that actually shaped the very words we're using right now. Every single word you say has a massive, incredible journey behind it. And today, we're going to uncover exactly how those ancient whispers evolved into the language we speak today.
So let's kick things off with a question that honestly drives native speakers and new learners completely up the wall. Why does English seem to make absolutely no sense? Seriously, why is this language just packed full of unpredictable, irregular verbs and bizarre spelling rules that seem to contradict themselves at every turn?
Well, the answer is actually incredibly beautiful. English wasn't cooked up cleanly in some sterile lab with strict, perfect rules. No, it's a messy, living legacy. It's built on thick layers of history, sheer survival, and vastly different groups of people colliding and mixing together over centuries. It grows, it changes, and it travels.
Here is our time traveler's roadmap for this explainer. We're going to hit 6 major eras: the seeds of Old English, becoming a double language, the Great Vowel Shift, Shakespeare and standardization, the American branch, and finally, the global tongue.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, the seeds of Old English.
Picture a cold, gray sea in the 5th century. The Roman Empire is losing its grip, and Germanic tribes, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, push their wooden boats onto the shores of Britain. They brought this rough, strong language that basically sounded like waves crashing against rocks. But then, fast forward to the 8th century, Viking invaders show up from Scandinavia bringing their own set of words. To survive, trade, and farm together, these two neighbors had to figure out how to communicate. And because of that necessary mixing, English actually started losing some of its incredibly complex grammar just to make everyday survival possible.
This brilliantly illustrates the simple, powerful bones of Old English. Hus became house, man became man, and friend became friend. You can literally hear those ancient voices, right? And when you throw in the Viking additions, everyday words like sky, skin, leg, and window, you start to realize that these ancient, rugged words still form the absolute core of our daily conversations today.
Which brings us to part 2, becoming a double language.
So Old English was like a young, sturdy tree taking root, but a massive storm was on the horizon. The year is 1066. This is arguably the single most important date in the entire history of the English language. William the Conqueror, the French-speaking Duke of Normandy, crossed the Channel and took over England. Literally overnight, French became the language of power. For the next 300 years, the rich lords, the kings, the judges, they all spoke French. Meanwhile, English was shoved firmly down into the mud, becoming the language of the poor farmers and servants.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how this solves the everyday mystery of why English has multiple words for the exact same thing. Out in the muddy fields, the English-speaking farmers raised the cow and the pig using their Old English words. But inside the fancy stone castles, the French-speaking lords were eating the cooked meat, calling it beef and pork. And we just kept both. We have the simple, earthy Old English words like house and start, alongside the fancy French words for the exact same concepts, like mansion and commence.
But here's the kicker. English didn't die out under French rule. Instead, it acted like a river flowing quietly beneath the ice. The common folk started cherry-picking the best words from both languages, merging them together to forge this highly flexible, totally creative, double language we now call Middle English. It was a language adapting to survive.
And that flows right into part 3, the Great Vowel Shift.
In the 1300s and 1400s, English hit its awkward teenage years. Over a span of roughly 200 years, something incredibly strange happened. People just changed how they spoke. They completely shifted their vowels. Before this shift, the word bite sounded like beat, out was pronounced oot, and feet sounded like fate. We're pretty sure this happened because people from all over the countryside were packing up and moving into big, crowded cities like London. All those different regional accents collided, mixed, and mysteriously transformed the spoken language forever.
So the crucial takeaway is that writers of this era, like Geoffrey Chaucer, really proved this Middle English could be poetic and beautiful. But here's the catch, and honestly, the reason you might have hated spelling tests in school? Because we kept the old written letters exactly as they were, while completely changing the spoken sounds in our mouths, we wound up with an absolute spelling nightmare. Take the word night. A long time ago, people literally pronounced every single letter, saying k-nich. The spoken sounds moved on, but the spelling was frozen in time on the page.
Now let's step into part 4, Shakespeare and standardization.
Entering the Renaissance of the late 1500s, English was gearing up for the global stage and waiting for a man who would change its DNA forever. Just look at that staggering number, 1,700. That's the estimated number of completely new words invented or popularized by the legendary playwright William Shakespeare.
Shakespeare didn't just use English, he passionately played with it. He injected it with deep human emotion, gifting us everyday words like lonely, hurry, generous, and bedroom. He coined phrases like having a heart of gold or being in a pickle. He proved that English could be endlessly flexible and incredibly profound, literally shaping the way we express our feelings right up to this very second.
At the exact same time Shakespeare was doing his thing, another revolution hit, the printing press. William Caxton brought it to England, which suddenly made books cheap and widely available. But printers faced a massive headache. Everyone spelled words differently based on where they lived. So they made an executive choice. They standardized spelling based on London's rules. For the first time ever, English had formal rules, meaning a person up in the north of England and someone down in the south could finally pick up the exact same King James Bible and understand each other perfectly.
Let's cross the ocean for Part 5, the American branch.
Strong, organized, and standardized, this early modern English climbed aboard wooden ships and crossed the Atlantic. The settlers encountered a wild new world, borrowing words like skunk and moose from Native American tribes. But as time passed, the ocean really separated them from London. After the American Revolution, Noah Webster intentionally simplified American spelling, dropping the U in color, changing the RE in theater, specifically to forge a proud, brand new national identity. Plus, fast forward a bit, and new inventions like the car forced these two geographically separated countries to invent completely different words. The British got the bonnet and the boot, while Americans got the hood and the trunk. And here's a super common misconception. You might naturally think British English is the older, more original pronunciation. But look at the 1800s R drop. Back in the 1700s, almost everyone in England pronounced a hard R at the end of words like car or teacher. But in the 1800s, it became a trendy fashion statement in London's high society to drop that R. Because the American settlers had already sailed away long before this fashion trend kicked off, American English actually preserved those much older, original English sounds.
Which brings us to our final era, Part 6, the global tongue.
Today, whether you speak British or American English, the differences are really just the clothes the language happens to be wearing. Underneath, they cover the exact same historical bones. There are roughly 1.5 billion English speakers walking the earth today. But here is the most mind-blowing part of that statistic. The vast, overwhelming majority of them are not native speakers. English no longer just belongs to England or America. It has been completely handed over to the entire world. It's the language of international pilots, global scientists, and everyday travelers connecting across borders. Because it values human connection over rigid perfection, English acts like a giant hungry sponge. It enthusiastically absorbs words from every single culture it touches. Sushi from Japanese, yoga from Sanskrit, safari from Swahili. And in our digital age, it's evolving at lightning speed, creating massive new vocabularies for the internet, with words like blog, selfie, and emoji that literally didn't even exist a few decades ago. So, we've seen English grow from the rugged shouts of a few Germanic tribes into a global roar of digital signals. But this living legacy isn't finished. Every single time you speak, you are adding your unique voice, your personal accent, and your distinct history to this ongoing story. You aren't just using a language, you're participating in a multi-thousand-year-old human experiment. So, as we put out our metaphorical campfire today, I want to leave you with one final thought. How will you leave your personal mark on the world's ultimate, ever-changing mixing language?